Today I'm going to be telling you about all the books I read in the month of October, and I'm gonna go ahead and just set expectations here. Terrible reading month. Barely read anything, barely liked anything. It was a bad time, but that's okay. The month in itself was great. I had a lot of fun in October. I love October. It's my favorite month of the year. I watch a bunch of horror movies. This year I rewatched the Final Destination franchise. I try to pick a franchise every year. Rewatch one of those. Last year it was Hell House. The year before it was Scream. This year it was Final Destination. I didn't get all the way through to watching the new one yet, so I do need to finish that, but that was fun. I had a friend's wedding in October. I went to the park and watched The Nightmare Before Christmas for the first time ever, actually, outdoors in perfect fall weather. I carved pumpkins. I had the state fair. I went to go see Sabrina Carpenter perform the short and spooky special edition on Halloween in Madison Square Garden in New York City. That was amazing. It was a really fun month. Reading took a back seat, but I've never missed a wrap up before, so I'm not gonna miss one today either. It will just be a more brief one just to catch you up on the books that I did read in October. Going in order from my least favorite to my most favorite, but most of these were my least favorite. It was not a very notable reading month. I will start with one of my 2-star reads, and that was Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. This is a Christmas romance book that I had an early copy of from the publisher via NetGalley. This is my first book from B.K. Borison I've read. I know this is a very popular author recently, and I thought this concept sounded very cute. It is a Christmas romance about a romance between a woman and the ghost of Christmas past who is haunting her, which is such a fun concept, but unfortunately it just didn't really come together for me for some reason. I liked the beginning, I liked the setup of it. It definitely has a very Hallmark Christmas movie feel, but with spice, probably more spice than is in a Hallmark Christmas movie. And it just didn't charm me the way that I wanted it to. I went back and forth between reading on my Kindle and listening to the audiobook, seeing if a different experience could maybe immerse me more in the story. I don't know if it was that I just wasn't in the holiday spirit yet for a Christmas story, but this one just didn't have me really falling in love with these characters and really falling for their romance together. I think it was a little bit hard for me to get on board with the idea of the romance between these characters. Yeah, without spoiling anything, it just didn't really charm me. It only got a 2-star from me. This doesn't mean that I wouldn't read from B.K. Borison again. This one just wasn't it for me for some reason. My other 2-star was We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. I ended up reading this book for my friend Jessie's book club over at Reading with Jess. So we have a book club discussion on her channel that I will have linked down below in the description if you want to check it out. Here are full thoughts about this book. She had some really great questions. We really dug in to understanding this book. Unfortunately though, I still didn't love it. I only gave it a 2-star. This is a story that follows this couple who are moving into this house together out in the countryside. They're moving out of London, moving more to like the middle of nowhere, a smaller town, because the woman has recently had this accident where she fell off a cliff. She almost died, and she's still recovering from that. She ended up getting sepsis, and so she's just had a really tough recovery period. So her husband decides to move them out to this quiet country house, and then she begins having a lot of strange experiences in this house. She thinks it might be haunted, but she also doesn't know if she can trust herself, because part of her recovery and this post-sepsis syndrome that she has is that she's more prone to having hallucinations, and so she's not sure if maybe this is something she's hallucinating or if something strange is happening. And from there she begins to learn more about the house, the history of the house and the town and the people around her, and uncovers some things along the way. This book did have a good setup in the beginning. It has very short chapters that go back and forth between the husband's and the wife's perspectives. You very quickly learn that there are secrets on both sides of this marriage, and I really enjoyed that setup of just like really choppy, fast getting into the story. What secrets are we withholding from one another? Is it going to be a cat and mouse style thriller? What's going on in the house? What's going on in this relationship? I was really immediately pulled into the book, but I felt like it just did that really long. Like it just stretched out for a really long time before in the end revealing stuff, and then, you know, things all start to play out from there, but it just felt very repetitive, very slowly dragged out. The secrets that they were harboring were honestly pretty disappointing and not interesting. It just felt like the story didn't do much, and I was pretty disappointed by the end because of that. This is the third book, I believe, now that I've read from Sarah Pinborough. I've read Behind Her Eyes and Insomnia, and I enjoyed both of those much more than I enjoyed this one, so I think this was maybe just a fluke. between me and Sarah Pinborough. I would still be happy to pick up more from her in the future. This one just wasn't a great fit for me. Next is a book that I ended up giving a 2.5-star rating, and that is The October Film Haunt by Michael Wehunt. This is also a book I had as an early copy that the publisher sent to me. It came out in September, so I was a little bit late getting around to it. But this is a horror story that has cult elements. And this book started so strong. It really, really, really had me. I thought this could be a 5-star book, and then my experience just withered as it went along. I had a lot of trouble with a lot of different things, particularly in the writing style of this book that just made it really start to drag. This book took me longer to read than a book usually does. It just felt like every time I picked it up, I could only get another 20 pages into it or so because it was so dense. It felt like a very heavy, slow moving thing to get through for some reason. But there were a lot of things to like about this. It had a lot of strengths. And when I was looking back at my ratings, I was like, should it be a 2.5? Because I feel like it's pretty memorable to me in a lot of ways. So maybe I would give it a 3 at this point now that I've had some time to cool off from it and I don't feel that disappointment coming off of it anymore. I feel like my appreciation for this could grow. And this is an author that I absolutely want to read from again because there were so many things to like about this. And when I first started reading the book, it actually reminded me very much of Paul Tremblay's writing style. And Paul Tremblay is maybe my favorite horror author, like maybe my number 1. He's definitely in my top, 3 to 5. He might be my absolute number 1 favorite horror author out there right now. So I was having a great time. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is like Paul Tremblay level writing. This is gonna be amazing. What this story follows is this woman named Jory, and Jory was a part of this horror movie enthusiast group, a trio of her friends many years ago, and they would watch horror movies together, and then they would go to the filming locations for the horror movies and go like investigate, see where it all happened. And she had a blog where she would write about their adventures doing that as well. They were called The October Film Haunt. And there's this one particular movie that is at the center of this story, and it was made by this film director who is this anonymous person named Helene Enriquez, I think it was. Nobody knows who that is, and they made several movies, but their most prominent one had this creature called the Pine Arch Creature, and the film was super weird. It would have these long, lingering, 6-minute long segments where the camera would just sit still and you would just watch an empty screen happen. And there was all of this lore built around the movie that those moments were called transfigurations and that they're opening these doorways to hell. It's like really creepy concepts. So they got really obsessed with that movie. They're like going and scouting this location. She ends up writing a blog post about it and detailing their experience and saying like they actually encountered the creature, and it just builds this like cult following around this film. And then teenagers end up getting really pulled into it and are like trying to go recreate those rituals themselves, and someone actually ends up dying doing that. And so then Jory and her group go through this like big cancellation essentially on the internet, and so she steps out of the limelight. And this story follows her many years later, where now she has a son, she is living off in the middle of nowhere, she's trying to live a more anonymous lifestyle because she is really infamous now. A lot of people hate her for what happened, and they blame her for the death of this person and for continuing to draw this enthusiasm around, the super dangerous stuff that was going on. And one day she receives a videotape in the mail and discovers that someone is now filming her. And it seems like this cult following, these people are now trying to recreate the movie, pulling her into this, filming her, and bringing a lot of danger into her life. And so the concept was so good, and this book genuinely frightened me. It's very difficult for me to actually be scared to read a book, but this book actually just felt so eerie and so haunting. This concept of these people watching you and filming you, and you getting this tape in the mail, and this whole concept of like the horror movie that originated this concept, and is it opening these doorways to hell, and what's going on, and now people are killing people and her life is in danger. It was so good. Like it had so much potential. I can feel the world around it. It feels so real to me still. It feels like a movie I watched with how great it was at depicting this atmosphere and really communicating this eerie feeling and freaking me out. But it just kind of dragged me there. It's another book where I felt like I was just lingering in this moment for so long and not a lot was happening. The story doesn't progress forward very much. It's so, I don't want to say it's overwritten, but it's like really great at depicting this rich feeling and atmosphere, but it just like holds you in that. And then the end gets very abrupt and all these weird things are happening, and it's a little bit confusing of what even is actually going on at the end. And then it just drops you and then the book's over. And it felt like a horror movie in that way. Like I could see this on a screen. There's several big horror movies from the last 5 years or so that I feel like kind of follow this too, where it like lingers you and drags you in this weird stuff, like what is going on, what is going on, and it has a crazy ending scene like that movie Men that came out, or even like The Babadook, which is a little bit older. I feel like this author really loves the horror genre. I feel like they're really talented at creating atmosphere. I think they could do some really great things. The experience of getting through this book and just how dense it was is just what dragged the experience down for me for some reason. So I wanted to love it. There was a lot of good elements here, but unfortunately it just didn't go as great as I wanted it to, but I will definitely be looking out for more from them in the future. Definitely think there is potential here. And then my last book that I read this month was a 4-star. So the one book that I really enjoyed, and that was Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This is now my second book I've read from Rachel Harrison. The first was So Thirsty, which I believe I also gave a 4-star to. And this is probably one of her more popular ones. This is the book that I first started hearing about Rachel Harrison. I feel like a lot of people have read this one. I was reading it for an in-person book club, so I read it with a couple friends and then we got to talk about it, and it was a really, really great October read. I feel like most people would assume that just based on the witchiness of the cover. It gets recommended a lot for October reads, but it truly is a perfect time to read it in the fall. Would still be great to read in November or any time of year too, if you wanted to pick it up soon. But the story follows this woman named Annie who is going through a breakup. She's been with this guy for like 8 or 10 years. They've been living in New York City together. She thinks he's the one. And then the relationship just falls apart. They break up and she has to decide what to do next with her life. And she ends up taking this opportunity to move to upstate New York, out in the country. She takes a job as a teacher and she moves to this little quaint little charming small town. She ends up meeting this woman named Sophie who she befriends. And Sophie is basically a witch. And the story follows their time together as Annie's getting over her breakup, trying to figure out how to move on in life, meeting this new woman who is influencing her along the way too. And a lot of the times the book has you wondering, what kind of direction is this going to go in? Is this going to take a dark turn, or is Sophie going to help empower her? And it's going to be a more hopeful story, and you really don't know for a long time. And this book just resonated so deeply with me. I loved it so much. I think the writing style in this was really great. It's a lot of just very plain short sentences. I don't remember if that's what Rachel Harrison's writing style was like in So Thirsty as well, because it's been a bit since I read that book, but it just has a very distinct ethereal voice, and it's just very matter of fact, but then also sometimes is able to communicate something that so poignantly captures a human feeling, a human emotion, what it's like to live this human experience in a very simple sentence or a collection of sentences. I think the writing style was just really great, and it was just a really authentic story. I feel like it's a story a lot of people can relate to. I really enjoy reading books about breakups, I guess, for some reason, because it reminded me of Good Material by Dolly Alderton, which I also really loved, which follows the fallout of a breakup and just the story of someone moving on with their life and figuring out what's next for them. With this one, I particularly enjoyed the witch angle to it. Witches in stories typically relate to concepts of feminism and women's empowerment and how women are seen in society, and I like what this book did with all of that. I liked what it did with Sophie's character, with Annie's character. I liked the journey she went on. There was just a lot to enjoy with this one. The reason it was a 4-star, not a 5-star, I guess, is also it just didn't have that complete wow factor for me. It doesn't have a ton of plot to it, I guess. It is kind of just like a slice of life story. The ending may be a little bit underwhelming to me in some ways, but overall I was really pleased with my experience with this one, had a really good time with it, and I'll definitely be reading more from Rachel Harrison. I do have an early copy that was sent to me that I'm late on reading of her new book, Play Nice, so that'll be the next one I read from her. But yeah, I feel like she's quickly just becoming a really dependable author for me. 2 4-stars in a row. Really like her writing style. I really like her concepts and what she does and how she fits in this particular genre where she's writing like horror type stories, but they're not super dark. They're kind of like light horror stories that are often pairing with something else in the human experience. Like So Thirsty was a story of female friendship that had vampires. This was a story of a woman going through a breakup and discovering herself with witches. I think Play Nice is a haunted house, also with elements of childhood trauma. So she really does an interesting job pairing those things and how she's exploring them, and just a very specific lens that she takes with the tone of her stories that I really like too. So that's it for all the books I read in October. Short and sweet this month. Let me know how your reading went in October down in the comments below. Let me know if I convinced you to pick up any of these books. I wasn't really selling very many of them this month, except for Cackle. If you haven't read Cackle yet, I definitely would recommend that one. And I do think all the other books to have an audience for them as well. They just weren't necessarily the best books for me this particular month, but that's okay. Excited for November. We have the Goodreads Choice Awards coming out soon. If you missed it, I did make my predictions video for the mystery thriller category. That was my most recent video, so you can go check that out if you haven't seen that yet. I'm very excited to see what is announced in that category and see if I want to pick up some more books from that category, see if I want to pick up some books from other categories throughout the rest of the year. Still time to find some new 5-star favorites. So this month, just a little bit of a blip, but that's okay. We're moving forward. I'm sure there will be plenty of new great reads in my future. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.